Hey friends, there's something new from our sponsor Text Control. Their new product, DS Server, provides document services out of the box for all platforms and languages. Whether you want to integrate document creation, editing, sharing, or collaboration into your web app, DS Server provides the back-end technology to integrate that professional document processing. For example, using DS Server, you could integrate an MS Word-compatible document editor into pure JavaScript, Angular, or an ASP.NET Core application. You can create PDF documents using Web API calls or even request electronic signatures from end users. DS Server is also hosted on-premise in your infrastructure or with your cloud provider, such as Microsoft Azure. And you can test DS Server without downloading anything. Create your first DS Server application in minutes by requesting a trial token on their dedicated website at dsserver.io. That's DSServer.io. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm talking with Stan Dolcini. He works on Zero AD, which is a really exciting open source real-time strategy game. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm very well, and I'm enjoying playing this game. I'm trying to understand why it's free, because it's so good. It's like any game that you would pay $60 for. It's really quite extraordinary. Maybe you could start at the beginning and tell me about it.
Oh, yeah. So the project is actually, pretty old. It's 20 years old. It started in the 2000s. Some players of Age of Empires and some modders got together. I think it was the Tanto clan at the time. And, they got together and they wanted to, do something more than just mod Age of Empires. So they started panning out the game and what they wanted it to be compared to Age of Empires. And after a while, they started making an engine and worked on it for about 9 years. Well, because of that lens, things changed a lot in their lives. Like some got married, some had kids and everything. So they didn't have as much time to keep working on it. And in 2009, they decided to go open source because they felt like it would bring a new life to the project. Well, and it did. So yeah, how it started. In 2015, they went for crowdfunding. I didn't quite get the result they expected. So, here we are now, and we're just living after this. I've been working for the game for the past 10 years. I started as a random contributor, did a lot of 3D art, on Blender and things. And after a while, after 6 years, I managed to get into the team as an artist. And now I'm working as the project leader of Zero AD.
Wow, that's amazing. So in the 2010 timeframe, there was about 10 or 15 people working on it, but over 100 people have contributed to this over the course of the project. How do you all organize? How do you meet? Because that's a lot of sheep to be herding if you've got all these project members.
So most of the time it goes over the public forums. Sometimes people go on IRC. Yeah, it still exists. And, it's always complicated because we have so many people with so many different backgrounds going from so many different places, and they don't, see the game the same way. Some want it to be hyper realistic. Some want it to be really fun. They want to play hardcore multiplayer. It's usually quite hard to balance all this. You usually get a bunch of angry people and a bunch of happy ones. At least we have the happy ones sometimes. But yeah, so organizing all this is a bit hard. Well, I try to talk to as much as people as possible, trying to understand what they want and how I can help them achieve their goal, by somehow teaching them modding or trying to, I don't know, teach them programming. Sometimes it's a really educative process to get people involved with this game because, most people who come are not game developers. They're not even programmers and stuff. So we have to, teach a lot of them how to do things. Some do extraordinary things, I've seen people coming and do really bad thing. And then after a while, I'm not even able to grasp how good it is. So yeah, it's a bit complicated. We have some bug management software, like it's called Track. We have some contribution process using something called Fabricator, where you basically upload diffs on whatever you want to change the game, and then you go through a review process, and stuff goes that way. This is like, the only way to contribute is usually through that means. It's hard to contribute in another way. But some people just like come to the forums and give ideas and challenge some of the decisions that were made in the past. So it's always a big exchange, I'd say.
What are you using for source control?
So we're using SVN.
Okay. That's why the diff files.
Yeah, because Git wasn't out when the project started. So it's been a complicated process. We do, however, provide 2 Git mirrors, one on GitHub and one on GitLab. So you can actually generate the diffs from that, and then you upload it to the source control. It allows everyone to use whatever they're most comfortable with. Of course, we don't have pull requests and stuff like this, which could be like a bit more modern.
Well, but at the same time, though, as an old person myself, emailing a diff is a kind of pull request. It's more of a push request, but it worked very well for many years. And it's cool that you can have a mirror, generate the diff from your own local Git, and then email the diff.
Yeah. So yeah, but some people are getting really frustrated about this. Like they say, I don't want to use SVN. I should just Git. But no, it's not the same. I can't use all the tools I'm used to. And also, Fabricator can be a bit complicated for newbies because you have to install a bunch of extra tools, which do not always work as they should. Yeah, so for some people, it's just too off-putting to be able to contribute, which is a shame, really, because they are usually really good people.
Interesting. So what is Fabricator? What is that tool?
Well, it's like a web interface, like GitHub or whatever. You can just like upload diffs on there and do line-by-line reviews, comments, and everything.
I see, a code review tool. It's PHAB Fabricator.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think it's maintained by Facebook. I think they got bought some time ago. And they're actually dropping SVN, which is going to put us in quite a lot of trouble.
Isn't that interesting, though, that you have this game, that everyone wants to make and play the game and work on the game, but you have to deal with the fact that the company that made Fabricator, called Facility, got bought in June and they're winding down, and SVN, someone says, I love your game, I want to be involved, but I don't like your source control. None of that has anything to do with the game. That's just people and tools.
Yeah, actually, a lot of my focus shifted from when I was just an artist doing art stuff and everything, from like managing people and doing stuff. Like there is a lot of hidden work behind that. And it's quite easy to get drowned into everything because there are always not happy people. Always people want to talk to you about something that is happening. And also like, every open source project, it's entirely volunteer based. So people do this on the free times and they aren't always here. Well, sometimes people get like really frustrated because things don't go as fast as they can. Mm-hmm. And stuff like this, like platforms getting deprecated happen all the time. And for us on the 20 years of existence, we have seen a lot of things get deprecated. And it's usually like really slow for us to move on and start doing those things because you have to break. And it's the problem with every legacy project. You just have to break a lot of things to be able to be competitive again. And so from an external standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why are you using SVN? Why do you not Git? Git is everywhere. There is no one using SVN anymore. And you're just like, but we have been there for 10 years. So we just like, we have a lot of inertia and we need to not rush into everything that comes up as new. For instance, somebody came recently. We have a WordPress website. They said, WordPress is outdated. You should use Hugo, which is a static website builder using Go. And so you should use Markdown and whatever and everything. And you should use CDNs and stuff. And I was like, okay, but who's going to maintain that? Is Hugo going to be around in like the next 2 years, or it's just going to be dead? In the past, we have like chosen a lot of tools who got deprecated really fast. At the beginning, when they were deciding which languages to use, they tried something called Ferrite, which was like a weird scripting language that probably lived about 2 years. And they could have chosen that and would be like the only maintainers of this. Or we're using a 3D format called Collada. And that format is like, well, now it's not used much anymore. They use FBX or GLTF or something else. But now we have to maintain our own library to parse it because we are the only one to use it in the gaming environment and stuff. So each time we branch to choose another technology, we have to be really careful about like not letting it, well, waste the project or make things really difficult for us in the end.
Mm-hmm. So you've been working on this as a team member for a decade, for a big chunk of your life. You were 17 when you started. You have a full-time job, and you're a full-time, .NET developer, and you're working on this C++ and JavaScript app in your spare time, and I'm sure you have lots of spare time. What has it taught you about software development? Has working on open source game software at night made you a better developer in the daytime because you understand about all these things you're explaining, legacy software and making technical decisions and future debt and people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the size of the project. Like, I know like when people start a new project, they're overwhelmed by like a lot of code. I'm usually not that much because I'm like, okay, somebody at some point had planned something. It probably didn't go as well as it thought it would be, but there is like some general outline I can find. So I just need to browse the files and find whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much, bad code too. Like, finding like stuff that is like, that shouldn't have been written anyway, but like is there and you need to deal with it. So there is like a lot of refactoring in the process, which is something we usually do. Like as programmers, you just make yourself feel good about the code. Like, oh yeah, I refactored like this 3,000 line function into 25 lines being just the same thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of this. And I actually learned programming mostly through Zero AD.
Wow.
I had like lessons at school. I did a generalist engineering degree, but was oriented like for IT and stuff. And yeah, but most of the things I learned about programming was through Zero AD, not really through like the generics and stuff they teach you at school.
Right. So you learned in the real world.
Yeah, because, well, what they teach you at school isn't really real software. Sometimes idealistic software, like stuff like you want it to be like with good design patterns, good classes, everything inheriting or doing whatever. But in the real life, it's just like sometimes it's completely a mess. Sometimes it's great. Like I've seen some great projects, but most of the time, there is always something that is not like it should be.
Sometimes when I work on large systems, I'll think about a certain portion, a certain section of that system, and I'll say, wow, I'm amazed that works at all. Are there any parts of Zero AD where you're just like, wow, that shader or that part with the water or whatever, like, I don't know how that works, but that's amazing that it's still working after years.
Yeah, there are a lot of things like this. Well, the project, for instance, is like this, like people coming from everywhere working on a software project on their spare time and doing something that is shippable and that people enjoy to play. It's just like, what? How do you do work? Like people mostly come with the money questions like, but you're not paid. Why does it work? It's not possible and stuff like this. But then, in the code too, there are like a lot of things because it served as a thesis for some time about pathfinding and stuff. We have like something that is kind of state of the art with JPS and whatever. They use some kind of algorithm that was like really rare at the time. Some part of the code are really like this, like they are just state of the art stuff that is used for or not. Like one of the guy who now works at Google was like into real low level stuff. So part of the code is like really C looking C++ with like a lot of low level calls, pointer arithmetic or stuff like this. And yeah, it still works, but now with the recent compilers and stuff, it just like spits a lot of warnings and errors about like you're using something that is completely deprecated. Why are you doing this? It's especially the case on macOS because like they deprecate stuff so fast.
Yeah. It's always funny when the compiler is telling you, why are you doing this? Are you sure you know what you're doing? But it still works, so you keep going.
Yeah. We actually add something like this. So in CPUs, there are a lot of timers to do events at periodic times. Mm-hmm. And I think there is one called HPAT. There is one called QSC. Well, there are a lot of things like this. And we had some code that would just try to guess in your CPU what's the best timer, just to make the calculation of time the most precise as possible. But it's nearly useless in a game like this. We don't need that kind of precision. And so it turned out that it made assumptions that were true for about 15 years, maybe 17 years. And then AMD released a new CPU and everything broke.
So the assumption just was no longer an appropriate assumption.
Or maybe AMD just said, well, nobody's relying on this anymore, so you can just go on with a new architecture and just be good with it.
And then you have to work through that and you find a new architecture and you keep going.
Yeah. And that's how it works most of the time. So usually the OS provides you with some function to get the time. Windows has something called query performance counters or stuff like this. And it works, it's the basic stuff. But when you're trying to be too smart, then things start to go south.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting point here is that this application, 0AD, runs on GNU Linux, runs on BSD, runs on macOS and Windows, and it even runs on a Raspberry Pi 4. Were you impressed that was even possible, that it runs on a Raspberry Pi?
Yeah, well, the first time I got a Raspberry Pi 3B, and I was like, oh, this is Debian. Let's try to install 0AD. And, it just I clicked, and it opened, and it worked, and I was like, oh, so it actually works. And then now I just come with the Raspberry Pi at every event and just say, oh, look, it works. But yeah, some people come up with really exotic platforms. Someone came with PS3, I think, or PS2, I think, whichever you can install Linux on. And then they say, well, I want to run 0AD, and they did. And I was like, but what's the point? Somebody is trying to run it on Switch. There are people that have requested it to work on RISC-V, which might be an emergent technology. We will see in the future. But yeah, it works on most of the stuff. Now it works on IRM Macs too, because they have Rosetta. And at some point, we need to get a Mac to actually make it work natively or something.
And you want it to scale on the system. It needs to look good on a Raspberry Pi 4, but I've also got a brand new PC that I'm on here, and it looks like a AAA game in 4K. It looks gorgeous. How does it scale the quality of the art and the performance?
Well, actually, pretty badly.
It looks good to me as a user. You might be making yourself feel bad because of you're the dev.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, the art was unmanaged for a long time, so we just did whatever we felt was pretty, which is why it looks pretty. And then you get a graphics programmer that tells you what are you doing? You shouldn't even be able to run this. This is bad. You have too many bones in your model. You have too many faces. You use too much transparency or whatever. And you're like, okay, but it runs. And he says, no, this is not good. You can't run it with new modern hardware correctly, or it's going to be it's too slow compared to what it should be or whatever. And you're like, well, it runs. And so, yeah, there is the quality doesn't scale really much down. High up, it works fine. You get a RTX 3090, it's going to work. But if you're running on the Windows, I wouldn't try it on integrated graphics and stuff like this. On Linux, it might work because I've actually seen two laptops. One was running Arch Linux. The other was running Windows. They had a 40 FPS difference. Same game, same settings, everything.
Interesting. And so that's a great example of the kind of thing that someone who might be listening to this episode could say, that doesn't make any sense, right? On this one, it's going through the DirectX pipeline. On this one, it's going through the OpenGL pipeline. Maybe I want to go and look at that and find out why. Because for the most part, games on Linux and Windows should be within a couple of frames a second of each other. So something interesting is happening there.
Actually, both are running OpenGL because we didn't have enough people to, write another backend. Although we probably will have to write a Vulkan backend someday because macOS has said, we don't want to support OpenGL anymore.
They just keep changing stuff. Mac just keeps changing stuff. Just it's like, do you want a software to run there or not?
Yeah, I think they got stopped a bit by Adobe, who said, you want to remove OpenGL, but we're using OpenGL for Photoshop. Are you sure you don't want Photoshop on Mac anymore? And say, okay, well, we're deprecating it. We haven't removed it yet. It might happen in the future. So for now, I'm just like, okay, it might happen in the future. For now, we are fine. Mm-hmm. But at some point, we're going to have to like find another solution or an emulator or something, because it's going to stop working.
Are you under increasing pressure to ship code faster than ever before? Then it's time to work smarter with Raygun's modern approach to error and performance monitoring. Raygun gives you instant visibility into the health of your software. And what makes it so unique is that it not only tells you when something's gone wrong, it shows you exactly where it's gone wrong and how to fix it, right down to the line of code. Made by developers for developers, Raygun has built a suite of monitoring tools that are used and loved by thousands of software teams every day. You can monitor every corner of your tech stack with widespread language support and native integrations with GitHub, Jira, Slack, Bitbucket, Octopus Deploy, and more for even greater visibility. Visit raygun.com to resolve issues faster and to deliver flawless digital experiences for your users. That's raygun.com to get started on your free 14-day trial with plans starting from as little as $4 a month. Raygun.com. One of the things that about the game that's interesting, beyond the technical things that we've been talking about so far, and the art, which is gorgeous, and the fact that it looks amazing, is that the historical accuracy of the elements has been like a priority. Like, it's important to not just make up cultures and make up, names of things. Where did that come from? Was that something that came before you got there, that someone said this is an important priority of the project?
Yeah, indeed. Like most of the people at the beginning were into history. I guess Age of Empires inspired them to do stuff like this and then go farther than they ever could. And so, yeah, most of the time we have to research extensively, like whatever weapon they were using, whatever type of columns, how it should look, like would they do something like this and stuff like that. This has only been held back by gameplay matters, because at some point, like, people just want to have like a fun game and they want to have a competitive game. Not all of them do, but most of the people who are allowed on the forums are usually multiplayer people, and they want like something to be playable rather than to be a state-of-the-art historic game. So it's really hard to conciliate the two and try to keep as much reality as possible. So at least the art is somewhat accurate. And we're trying to, the technologies and stuff like this, we're trying to keep something like this, but we can't go too far because then it becomes completely imbalanced. And we have 13 civilizations, so it's kind of hard to keep everything into order.
Does everyone, I hear about this a lot when my son plays like Overwatch and different things like this, where he'll say they're going to nerf this person and they're going to buff that person. They're going to make that person weaker and that person stronger. Do you find yourself with 13 different groups, whether it be the Celtics or the Hellenics or the Iberians, you have to go like, oh, their spears are too strong. Oh, their bow and arrows are too much. Oh, that guy's got horses. He's beaten up you're constantly balancing things to make sure that everyone doesn't know, like, go play the Carthagins. They're the ones that'll beat everyone.
Yeah, that's a part. I'm not really good at the game. Like, I play really badly.
Good at the game.
No, I'm terrible at the game. I know how to cheat, but that's not how to play the game. But yeah, the people like working on this. So I'm always trying to include players into these discussions because they usually know better. The problem is they can be biased. Like, if they are the top 10 players of the game, they're going to want something from the game that most players probably don't care about or don't know about. And it's always hard to conciliate, like, the SP player, the people playing single player, and the MP player, the people playing multiplayer, because they want different things. And we have something in open source called feature creep, where you just like try to stuff as much features possible with a lot of options and stuff like this. And like at the end, it becomes a really complex system to manage and to fix. You have to, I don't know, like you have to test that every little feature might work in every given situation with everything. And just like, it's too much work most of the time.
This is such a great example of customer development, right? Hey, we're talking to customers. We know that this is what they want. And then you go, oh, are these all just expert customers? We need to talk to newbies, There's a lot of work to be done on your project, isn't there? There's customer development, there's documentation, there's maintaining the website, there's art, there's music, there's engines, there's testing, and on and on and on. Where would someone...
And there's people.
Where would they go to even participate and be involved?
Yeah, so, documentation, it might be the easiest one because it's mostly, you just create an account on track.wildfiregames.com and then you are able to modify page and improve things there. For testing, you can just play the game, it's mostly good. And then if you are a bit more adventurous, you can test new patches or test the development version. For instance, if you're on Windows, you can just get SVN and you get the last build binaries, so you can just play the latest version at any point. For the rest, it's a bit more complicated. For actual testing, writing unit tests and stuff, you have to go through the contribution guidelines and submit patches and stuff like this.
I'm on the website right now under community, and I click on participate. And it's really nice because if you're a translator, maybe you're not even a coder, and you want to translate it into your language, or you want to do an art asset, you've really separated things very nicely for people to get involved.
Yeah, usually it ends up about ask Stan because he knows. So at some point I'm the bottleneck of all the contributors because I'm just the one that is answering everyone and has to know everything.
Well, how do we make sure that Stan doesn't burn out? I mean, you don't scale.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I actually kind of burned out a few years back because, it's been, we have a lot of, stuff, because people are involved, stuff isn't always like it should be. And there are rivalries and stuff not going as it should and everything. And so at some point I got so involved in the project that I could not dissociate it from myself. It became so much a part of me that everything bad that was happening was actually happening to me. And I had to take a 1 month break because I could not dissociate the project from everything. So now I'm trying to keep a distance, but I'm still way too much involved in stuff.
That is really hard. I can relate to that feeling of ownership of a community. And if something goes wrong, it's your fault. And if something goes right, it's had nothing to do with you, because only bad things. You do have to take care of yourself and take care of your community and build a community of positivity and try to avoid those rivalries if you can.
Yeah. One of the images I use for this is Tetris. Success disappear and errors pile up.
Wow.
Because you just every time you have this block that is not going right, and then everything goes in until you lose. And yeah, it's been kind of like this for some time, and I'm really trying to get new people involved, spread the word, trying to find new solutions to these problems. And yeah, and just educate people so they can actually someday maybe replace me too. That would be nice.
That's actually super important. And I love that you said that as we get towards the end here. That's called successor management. That's when you're actively thinking about who is your successor. For example, I don't plan to retire for another, 10 years, but I'm still actively thinking about who the next me is for the things that I do. So thinking about the next Stan or the next 5 is a big important part of a project, especially one that's lived for 20 years like this one.
Yeah. And it's a really complicated process because everything is based on trust, and you don't trust the same people as the guy next to you or the other developer next to you. And so you can't just say, I want this guy to be project leader. Everybody say, we don't know that guy, or maybe he's not the right one for the job and everything. And there is a lot of question of governance and how you, dictate whatever has to be done and everything. And it's never a simple question.
Yeah. Leaders often emerge rather than take control unless you want there to be a coup. And then somehow a coup has taken over the open source project. And, then you see messy things like people stealing domains and all kinds of bad stuff like that. What you really want is it to be a family, and for someone to rise to the head of the family and say, "All right, well, I'll wear the hat, I'll wear the crown now, but then I'll do it for a year or two." Almost like you could come every 4 years, like a president or something, and then rotate people in and out.
Yeah, it's complicated, and well, I have yet to find a successor, and I think I'm going to keep doing this for a while, and it gives me an interesting position. Like I can talk to people like you, stuff like on podcasts and things, and I think it's nice. But sometimes I just want to go back to doing art and just like not think about anyone putting up fires everywhere.
Well, one of the nice things for those who are listening about Zero AD is a lot of the people who've worked on it, whether it be the art or the engines, then went on to do graduate work or they went on to school. So if you're listening, you're excited about games, you're an artist, you're a musician, you're a tester, you want to work on docs, you want to help with the website, if you want to get involved in open source, this is a really, really impressive game. This is one of those games that I think is funny because it says we're an alpha. This is a gorgeous AAA game that looks amazing and runs amazing. And I love that it is called an alpha release, not even a beta. It's still an alpha.
Yeah.
As polished and cool as it is. The August release was wonderful. People can go and get it at playzeroad.com. I'm going to put links in the show notes to the community section, and where also people can donate. So if you listen to this, play the game, you can donate to support the development, and it all goes to the project as a subset of the software and the public interest. So it's a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Stan, thank you so much for hanging out and sharing this journey. I've really enjoyed playing the game. I'm a huge Age of Empires fan, and this really is like Age of Empires turned up to 11. It's gorgeous. It's fun. The art is really high quality, and it's so nice to be able to also read the source code.
Yeah, make sure you test out the modes too. There is one really cool called Delenda Est, which like turns the single player experience really up a notch. And there are a lot of other modes funny, like someone replaces all units by ponies Ascendant. There is an in-game mode downloader, so you can actually download them from the thing. And there are a lot of mods coming. Like we just like need to update them at every version.
That's a great point. There's mods, there's map builders, there's all kinds of depth to this application beyond just the single player. Fantastic. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.